What's up, everybody? I'm Abatage, and welcome to another episode of the HLTB podcast. I am joined, as always, by my superior co-host, Pokepaw, aka Paula. How you going, Paula?
Hello there.
Today, we are going to talk about a couple of games that we've beaten. We've both got a single title on that list. Some more games we've been playing, because we haven't retired anything. And we're going to have a attempt at talking about a kind of almost sensitive topic, I suppose, which is the idea of disability and representation within games, which we'll get into later on because there are different ins and outs around that which we are going to discuss. And then we're going to round it up with a round of our guessing game where Paula's going to quiz me and see if I can scrape back some points to stay competitive before she totally just annihilates me once and for all.
And last time we were like in a similar situation and you just took the lead sometime. I don't know when. So
I think it was a late break, yeah.
I shouldn't sleep on my laurels over there.
No, well, I'm always trying. Let's put it that way. It just might not always work. But Paula, why don't you tell us about the game you have finished, which I have also finished a while ago, so I'm very excited to hear what you thought. Yeah, take it away.
Okay, so I finally finished Bimba, who would have known like playing this like an hour and a half, 2-hour game would take me this long. Holy crap. But I have to say I really, really enjoyed it. So I was curious about like all the issues and stuff. I stayed here for the story, and the characters and all the little cultural stuff.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoy it. I remember like when I finished the game, I was like, I finished this. I'm not okay. It hit me in the feels.
Yeah, there's a bit of I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, I'm not crying, you're crying. So yeah, I would totally recommend anyone who already has access to the game because of Game Pass or a bundle, like go play it.
Mm.
And if you don't have the game and you don't have the money, like go buy it and play it. Because I feel like this is one of those games that you really need to play to really get it.
Yeah.
Because I could be like talking about the game like to you all morning and it would be like, no, you have to experience it.
I agree.
So yeah, that is Bemba, and I would not like to spoil it for everyone, for anyone and everyone. So Josh, why don't you talk about that one game you've beaten this week?
Well, I'll just say on Vemba before we finish up with that, we did have a bit of a talk last episode about, the whole cultural thing and immigration and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say if you are interested and you haven't listened to that yet, go back an episode and have a listen to it because I think there's more stuff there as well that might entice you into Vemba. And it's a very good game.
Yeah, and it also talks about how people kind of like I want to kind of say like romanticize like inclusion stuff.
Yeah.
Without really looking into things like they want to showcase culture and stuff with all the actual struggle of people. So yeah.
Yeah, very good game. I totally agree with that. I finished Mud Runner, which I spoke about last week as well. This is the Spin Tires Mud Runner, Snow Runner game where there's some weird development shit between Spin Tires and Mud Runner. But I had played Spin Tires previously and I picked up Mud Runner in a bundle recently, which is why I decided to play that as well. Because after playing Spin Tires and Snow Runner, I really like that kind of game and I like that kind of premise. So I thought, seeing as I had Mud Runner in a bundle, I'd play it anyway. But it is essentially the exact same game as Spin Tires. And I kind of now, having finished all the single player maps and quote unquote campaign, there isn't really a campaign, there's just a series of maps where you have to meet a certain number of conditions to complete, which is usually delivering lumber to lumber mills. And once you've delivered enough, you have officially completed that map. But yeah, it was exactly the same as Spin Tires, so I don't really have much to say other than I did enjoy it. It is a bit more tech demo-y than SnowRunner is, because in SnowRunner there's more objectives that make sense. Like if you want to get from this part of the map to the other part of the map, you have to repair this bridge. So to repair the bridge, you have to go to the steel mill to get metal and deliver it to the bridge. Then you have to go to like the quarry to get stone and deliver it to the bridge. And once you've done all that and you've delivered all the materials, they fix the bridge and you can go across the bridge and you can go do other objectives. So while it's a bit, I guess, different because it's in snow instead of mud, it's got more objectives and that sort of thing. And SnowRunner is definitely the more polished kind of game. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. I still finished it. I just kind of played all the maps and did what I did in Spin Tires, but again in MudRunner. So don't really have much else to say about it other than that. But I'd say if you're like me and you're not sure what the difference is between Spin Tires and MudRunner, you're not really missing anything if you pick up one or the other, because they're basically the same. And I think the Spin Tires store page is no longer on Steam anyway, so your only option would probably be MudRunner if you wanted to pick up that early game. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that really. But it does lead into, if you don't mind, one of the games that I have been playing since then.
Oh.
Which is Expeditions, a MudRunner game.
Oh, you're still in that MudRunner kick then?
Yeah. This came out only recently, like a couple of months ago or last month, or I don't know, sometime very recently anyway. And it's the new version of these games. Again, I don't know who the developers are or how different they are or anything like that. I just throw it all into one category and I don't really care, to be honest, because they're all just on the same kind of premise. And so Expeditions, the latest one, is kind of, I think, I don't know if it has anything to do with SnowRunner, if it is the same developer or not, but by the title saying that it's a MudRunner game, I'm assuming it's the same developer as MudRunner. Whether or not SnowRunner is that same developer or not, I don't know. Again, like I say, I don't really care. But this is like the biggest and most ambitious version of these games. And there's so much to do. I've started playing it and I finished the main expeditions, because that's what they call the missions, hence the title of the game, Expeditions. I finished the home base map and I'm onto another map, which is basically the Grand Canyon in Arizona. And I think it's Arizona anyway, but don't hate me if I got that wrong. But I've been working my way through it and learning what's different in this one. And this one, again, has very specific objectives and things. It's less of a sandbox like the first games. It's more like SnowRunner, where you've got a series of objectives and missions to complete, which all require different equipment and different types of vehicles and going over different kinds of terrain and that sort of thing. But there's one key thing that I'm kind of not happy about in this game. And anyone who has played Spin Tires, MudRunner, or SnowRunner will know that part of the whole reason those games exist is because when Spin Tires was first like conceptually put together, it was put together with the idea that there are really difficult terrain to get across with these big, heavy, perhaps not very good trucks. And there's this whole system in the engine, which is a terrain deformation system, where like if you go through deep mud and everything, your truck will dig into the mud and create like channels where your tires are, or if it is too deep, your truck can bottom out and get stuck as well. So you have to kind of navigate your way through this difficult terrain in order to kind of get around. And that's kind of the whole point of those games. And that to me is the interesting fun part, because that's what sets it apart from other games. However, in Expeditions, so far at least, it's been lacking a lot of that kind of heavy terrain deformation kind of physics and technology, largely because of where it's set. So far, the only maps I've played have been very rocky kind of desert maps. So there's not a lot of mud or even deep sand or, those sorts of interesting kind of what's the word, like terrain, I guess, to get across. And I've only had access to like 3 different trucks so far, which might not sound like much or much of a problem, but in Spin Tires or Mud Runner and that, you load up a map and there are like 6 different, wildly different trucks on the map for you to unlock and find and discover and use. And some of them have like 8 wheels and they look like tanks and they'll go anywhere. And other ones are like kind of a bit smaller, but maybe a bit more nimble, so you can kind of get between trees and things if you need to go off-road. But in these ones, it's very much like a rock climbing full drive kind of game so far. And that's cool and everything, and I'm still enjoying it. And I think it will kind of change as I go into different areas and different maps. But so far, I'm a bit disappointed that I haven't got stuck in the mud or anything like that. The only time I've got stuck was when my little truck that I was driving basically fell between 2 rocks and I was unable to get it out, partly because I didn't bring any kind of equipment or anything that could have got me out. So that was my dumb fault anyway. But I don't know, it's not as exciting to me like trying to drive over hard rocks as it is to drive through soft, deep mud for some reason. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. And for some reason, I just find the soft, muddy or snowy kind of terrain much more interesting than just, hard rocks that you've got to try and winch your way over the top or something, which doesn't really, I don't know, just doesn't seem as exciting to me so far. But this game is definitely the bigger and better and badder version of everything, because you've got objectives which are like find your way to the top of this mountain, which is difficult because of all the rocks and everything. But then whip out your drone and go for a fly around to find areas of interest and maybe install some equipment because you're trying to set up a geological survey or something. Like, there are different objectives like that where sometimes you have to load up your truck with all this equipment and kind of make it over difficult terrain and all that kind of thing to do some seismic exploration or something. Or, it's more than just like in Spin Tires, the only objective is to deliver wood to a wood mill. In this one, there's like even more objectives than there were in Snow Runner, which already had more objectives anyway. So suffice to say, I've only really scratched the surface, but it's definitely, so far, it's bigger and badder and more interesting, but it also feels kind of limited and more controlled, I guess, and tightly held close to its chest more than other games where you just got heaps of trucks from the beginning and you could just go wild. And there was more of a sandbox, whereas now this is much more of a guided experience. And I'm not yet 100% sold on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I will find out as we go on, because I have looked ahead at some of the maps that you eventually get to. And I think one of the next ones I get to is like a desert kind of map. So I'm hoping for some like, deep sand challenges. And then after that, there's like one which is more of a kind of greeny, jungly, lush kind of map. So I'm hoping for some real mud and stuff in that one to get stuck into. Not to mention the other more unlocking more trucks and that sort of thing. So yeah, we'll see. That was a very long explanation of how this is quite different to the original Mud Runner games, but still kind of interesting. And the one other game that I will talk about before I shut up that I have actually played this week is Hasbro's Battleship, which, if you have ever played Battleships, the board game, you know what this is. And I actually was playing this with our resident roach from the community, Matt. And we had a few games together because we both had it. And it was a lot of fun, to be fair. Like, it's pretty straightforward. It's very much a battleship game. But there are different kind of commanders you can choose, which have different power-ups and that sort of stuff. So it's a bit more complex than your average battleship game. Like, there are different maps where it's different kind of grid configurations instead of just a square. And you can place your ships wherever you want, obviously, but there are different ship configurations as well. Like, they're not all just a straight line. Some of them are like a T shape. Some of them are like a squiggly kind of S shape. So, you can really get creative with where you put them and different configurations and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, you're still just basically picking squares where you want to shoot your enemy, and you find out whether you hit them or not when you do that. And if you did hit them, you get another go, and blah blah blah. And so we played about like 5 or 6 games, I think, and it was a lot of fun. And it's pretty good. And I think we both picked it up for like a few bucks each. That's why we ended up playing it together. So if it's still on special, I don't know if it is or if it really would be. But yeah, if you pick it up cheap, it's a good little board game to play with friends, because it can be kind of, what's the word, like if you're the kind of friends who just can talk shit and have a laugh and kind of almost make fun of what you're doing, it's one of those games where it can be kind of fun. And if you really roll with it, it's a good time. So yeah, Battleship was my other game that I played, which was unexpected, but yeah, still fun. But that's it. That's it for me. That's all I've been playing, and that's all I've completed. So I'm gonna be quiet now.
Ta-da!
Take it away.
Okay, so I've been playing 2 games in this past week. One of them might be a little bit surprising. So I've been playing League of Legends with a friend because I promised her that in my like in the week of that we do in that week that we do not have classes in, I would play League of Legends with her just for that 1 week. So I used to be an avid League of Legends player. I am not proud of that. It was a very interesting part of my life. But the thing is that, and this is quite a tangent here. So it seems my account was hacked for a bit.
Oh.
So the last time I played was in 2018, and like at the beginning of this month, like March 30 or April 1st, I got a message from Riot Games that someone was trying, like, I got like that verification code that you get whenever you don't log in into an account for quite a while,
Yeah.
and it detects like suspicious activity. So yeah, I didn't pay any attention to it because it was like, okay, they cannot enter that account without my code, so I guess that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a little bit to yesterday, and I discovered that, and I entered my account, and someone has been playing since April 1st, and I was like, how the fuck did they get into my account? So I did the sensible thing and closed all the sessions, changed all the passwords, even my Gmail password to one I just created last night, because just in case like any of my other passwords was like some kind of database that was shared around. So it was
Yeah.
like, and I don't know how to get help for this one, because I tried to navigate like the contact us slash help menu from Riot, and it is absolute hell. And there's no option over there that says like, "Hey, I suspect my account was hacked" or something like that.
Damn. You think there would be though?
Yeah, but anyway, uh, now to the actual thing that, uh, to the actual playing of the game. Um, I ended up playing like all my matches from last night. I think there were like 3 or 4 using Saya, which is a ADC, or pretty much like an attack dealer character that has like very fast attack, very quick attacks, and you try to kill everything with basics, with basic attacks and a couple of abilities.
Right.
And you know what? People suck.
Yep.
So without like in the first match, people didn't like talk in the chat too much. We ended up losing, mainly because the other team played a lot better, and I was like just getting used to the controls, like to the controls again.
Yep.
But no one was particularly angry on that one. On the second match, though, for some ungodly reason, like the person I got on support role was being an ass to me, like an absolute ass, because he was like, uh, he was saying like, "Hey, the ADC character doesn't know how to play." Um, he was like pretty much uh, roasting me alive, and I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna pay any mind." And because I wasn't like uh pretty much following his game and like trying to be a bitch back to him, they were like, "Oh, I see you don't know how to write either."
Huh,
So they got reported to hell and back
yeah,
after the match.
fuck that.
And the third one, uh, I was fearing something like that might happen again, but my friend was like, "Hey, she's learning, or like she's learning to play this again. Please don't be an ass." And they were like very understanding, very nice people. And they were like, "You know what? We're not playing ranked. If we lose this one, there's no problem." And they were actually like, um, being helpful. Like they were like,
Well, that's good.
so that was a very good one. I also like my friend got into the support role, so and since we were on voice chat, we were like more coordinated, and we managed to push like through all our line. But suddenly something happened, and was it like on top, like the player on top was like doing well until they weren't, and then everything fell apart. So
Mm-hmm.
and the last one, like the team was not a team. Everyone was to be an asshole, and in the end, like I was trying to do my best, but my support partner at some point pretty much abandoned me, and I was like, okay, I guess my friend is gonna be a support again. And we tried and tried, but we didn't win. Like, and the other team was like, wait, we're actually winning. And so one of our team was like, "Yeah, you're actually playing better at the game, and like the five of you are like together trying to kill to pick us like one by one. So obviously you're gonna win by numbers."
Yeah.
So yeah, I am happy that I'm playing with a friend. But if I was by myself, just by my little lonesome, no way, Jose, I would have gone back to that Toxic Fest, because like holy crap, like because like when my friend said like, "Hey, she's learning,"
Yeah.
the one that was being announced was like, "Oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." And I'm like, why don't you just assume the other person is learning from the get go instead of being an ass and then like
Yeah.
realizing you're being an ass to Neely? I don't know.
Like, it's not surprising to me, but at the same time, I do think, yeah, it would be so different if people just offered help first instead of just got angry.
Yeah, because the moment they started offering help, everything went a lot smoother.
Yeah. Like, rather than just going, you suck at this, fuck you. Like, more like, oh, I can see that you might be new or something. Maybe try this or do this or, whatever. I don't know. Like, yeah.
So yeah, at the end of the night, it was like my friend was like, "Hey, why don't we mute them? We don't have to go through this." And I'm like, you know what? I don't really care. Just let them flame, but we still need to communicate from time to time. So yeah.
Yeah, it helps if you don't actually give a shit as well. And you just go, whatever, man.
Yeah. So into happier times, I'm very close to finishing number 9. So right now I'm like at the 8th route
Ooh,
of the game, and there's 9, and there's like epilogue, prologue thing, I think.
yeah.
And there's all the extra content and all the ending content I have to do. But for the main story, like not main story, like the main story is like just one road, but for just like getting all the good endings, I'm close to done with this one. I think like the last time I was saying that I finally got to play as Mikoto, and she is a very sassy novel girl, and I love her so much. And I was on like one of like her first recommended route, which was Sakuya's route, which is pretty much like the childhood friend kind of deal, but this time with powers. So Sakuya in particular has the power of seeing the future. He doesn't have like exactly like any control over when he sees the future or like what part of the future he sees. Mainly because like since something happened as a kid, he's trying like actively not to see the future, so just visions come to him from time to time.
Yeah.
So he hasn't like properly trained on his power or anything. So first of all, like this route is a lot more centered around like trying to find first of all trying to find the traitor in the ship, because I don't remember if I said it, but they have come to the conclusion that there's a traitor in the ship.
Cool.
Like someone who maybe doesn't have powers or has offensive powers and is trying to boycott the entire operation.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, there's and this is like the first time you actually see the intruder that has been attacking the ship, who is a young man by the name of Natsuhiko, which actually has his own route later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But he has this device that no one has ever seen, and that is a gun.
Nice.
So first of all, they're like, okay, I'm gonna do. Mikoto is like, okay, I'm gonna do research. Let's see if the library has any information on this gun thing. Not only the library didn't have any information on that, and mainly had books on cooking, hobbies, and stuff like that. That like not real information about the era they were in.
Yeah.
There was like this empty bookshelf that seemed to have had books before, but only had like whatever was left that were like hobby cooking and stuff.
Cool.
So okay, that's sus. And another thing that I didn't say last time because I forgot, but there was a moment on Koharu's route where they were like starting to question things about the world, like that organization that sent us there, like sent them there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly there was like a light or like a effect on screen and a sound effect, and then she was like, "Huh, I wonder what was I talking about or I thinking about?" And I was like, "Okay,
Mm.
okay." So yeah, like the entire route of Mikoto and Sakuya revolves around, first of all, like their past relationship, I guess, because Sakuya saw something into the future and told Mikoto, and they were like, "Well, we make this promise because we think that by making this promise, we and pretty much like sticking to it, we will not get into that grim future."
Yeah.
And in this route, you pretty much discover that Mikado is a very serious person who overexerts herself because of that vision. She trains every day for her barriers to be stronger because she thinks that might be another way to avoid that future. And she pretty much collapsed at some point. Um, so things happen. Trader attacks again. Mikoto gets quote unquote kidnapped, but she's still on the ship. And Sakuya is the first one who finds her because he got like that vision of where she was,
Yep.
which led them which led everyone to be suspicious, and it was like, okay, I can see into the future. Um, we get into that dream sequence because, of course, and the rest of the route is misunderstanding a road over here. And then we get back into what the trader is doing. And then we get like to the specific moment where the vision kind of like is about to come true, but there's like this moment like Avengers style where Doctor Strange said like I saw like a million futures, like a million different possibilities, and we only winning one.
Mm-hmm.
So we pretty much get that moment here.
Cool.
Um, and we also get a lot more explanation on what is going on, what is the purpose of the powers, and there's okay. So there's a couple of powers that don't seem to be connected to the other ones, that are like seeing to the past and seeing to the future, and those are used to pretty much make a decision on which whether to use the other powers or not. I'm trying to be as vague as possible, but it is very, very difficult. So yeah, like Sakuya's role pretty much like ends up with the status, not a status quo, but it's like, okay, we're not doing this thing that we were called to do, and instead we are gonna return everyone's powers. And then I have like many things to say about Sakuya's route. I have opinions here. So I like the premise, but the execution kind of drags.
Mm.
So, and we were actually talking about this on my Twitter. So there was someone said like, "Hey, why is it that 90% of the times that they try to do childhood friends to lovers, it sucks?" And I'm like, I don't know, maybe because they add unnecessary drama for them to get together and things go wrong. So it's kind of like that, because there's like very specific point where they added unnecessary drama, and it was like it deviates from the whole purpose of the route, which is trying to find the traitor, because they were actually attacked by the traitor twice.
Right.
And it's like sigh. So yeah, that made me mad. I'm happy that we actually got like to see why Sakuya is the way he is, why Mikado is the way she is. Um and we also got to see like more of the purpose of the powers that they were given and why they are in this mission. But like all the in betweens that didn't have to do with those, they're kind of lame. But yeah, and then we got in. Then I got into the next route, which is Itsuki's route,
Mhm.
which this character is kind of the flirt, but he's actually like the best friend to the other girls, and he always tries to help the girls to pretty much get with their loved ones. So he's pretty much the wingman of the ship. Except when it's about himself, because he's an idiot in that regard. So it's funny because like when you select like your partner, the uh the whole decision, like the thought process that the protagonist you picked makes, kind of makes sense uh, any way you cut it. So for example, she was like, hey, you know what, I'm pairing up with Sakuya because first of all, like I don't think like the other guy has it in him to do anything malevolent because he's a lazy ass. But also she's like, okay, but since we have this promise, I'm just gonna make it easier on him. If you pick Itsuki, it's like, you know what, you're the one that I know about the least, so of course I'm gonna keep an eye on you, you asshole. um and it is kind of funny because it becomes like this game of cat and mouse, because Itsuki doesn't know when to shut up. I don't know, like he's Okay, so he's usually like very caring about other people and very gentle, and like he tries to nudge the other protagonist like into the right way, or like it gives them food for thought. But for some reason, whenever he tries to go further, talk to Ikaro, he ends up being like extremely blunt. And even though he tells the truth, there are ways, dude. And and pretty much like in this particular route, I don't remember like a lot of plot stuff happening in comparison to Sakuya's route. Like I'm just skimming through the various screenshots that I got here.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm up to the dream sequence that happens in every route, and it's pretty much like a journey for Mikado to of self discovery in a way.
Yeah.
Because as I said, she is so serious about stuff, and she's so bound to duty to the point that she doesn't care what happens to her as long as no one she cares about gets hurt. And of course, since we actually get like a snippet of Sakuya saying the future change, like making a little bit of a like an illusion of his own route, and he's like, "Hey, the future change because the person you care about the most change," and it seems like Mikado is curses away because it feels like whoever is with her tends to end up being a midfield for some particular event, and the like they either survive or not depending of if you get like the good or bad ending. That's the most I can talk about it. But yeah, this route is less about the overall plot and more about the individual characters.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of like it's not a bad route. I enjoyed it a lot, but I imagine that people who want to more about the plot will be like very disappointed on this one. So after that, we're back into the actual plot of the game with Koharu and Masamune. Masamune is kind of like the leader of the ship, and he's actually the one who has contact with the world. So he has to report daily on what the activities have been, uh, how the espers are getting along, and if they get attacked, of course, like he has to talk about that one.
Hmm.
So it's funny because he is pretty much the one who keeps the peace on the ship because everyone here is a fucking gremlin,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. So there's a particular scene where Koharu is actually appreciative of what Masamune does, and she's like, "If I can help you in any way, just let me know because I already know you do so much for everyone." And he starts crying, and another character, Nanami, passes by, and she's like, "I don't know what happened, but this guy is crying." And Nanami is like, "A poor salesman toils day and night, going door to door begging people to buy his products, but all he does is wear out his shoes. Then one day, his daughter thanks him for his hard work. Overcome with emotion, the father breaks down crying," or something like that. And that's pretty much what happens. Like, someone finally acknowledged all his effort. He's like, "Oh my god, I think something got into my eye." Uh, so in this route, since Masamune has more of a connection to the world, you actually get to know like what has been happening on that little island that we are supposed to be going to. Uh, and the reason why you are in this journey on the first place.
Yeah.
So it goes more like, okay, so since you all have to make like a very important decision, TM, we have to show you stuff that you may not want to see, like the war that has been brewing over here. And you also have to get to know each other, get to know your different backgrounds, so you can make an informed decision when the time comes.
Mm.
And it gets a little bit gruesome because at some point one of the characters kind of kicks the bucket,
Oh.
and he says like the world thinks like if someone is not able to complete this journey, they're like not really fit to make this one decision. I was like, holy crap, does the world care about us or not? And yeah, the road ends up with them pretty much running away and not fulfilling this mission because fuck the world. We want to be alive over here. Um, we actually meet like a couple more characters that are in not like from the ship but from somewhere else. Uh, then I went to back to Nanami, back to being Nanami, and I got to Akito's route, and I realize I've been talking about this too long, so I'm gonna try to keep it short. So Nanami has the power to raise memories, and pretty much she describes her power as uh, she being able to take away precious things from people around her. Because you lose your memory of someone you loved, you pretty much lose your loved one.
Yeah.
But she's kind of like being forced by her father to use her power indiscriminately, and they pretty much pay her father for her to use her power. But her power has a limitation, so she has to check or like observe the person to know which memories she has to take away. And she always makes the person talk about these particular memories before being able to erase them.
Right.
So that's kind of like and she has to touch the target too. So she has to know what to erase for her to be able to erase it. And in this case, she kind of like took something from Akito, but not like she didn't erase his memory. She erased someone else's memory.
Yeah.
And Akito has been pissed ever since. So when he saw her on the ship, it was like, well, fuck you. So she paired up with Akito because she said like she thought like maybe he was a traitor because he wanted to kill her in particular, and that ended up being like a red herring, so it didn't matter at the end. And this is where the interesting part comes into play because they're supposed to be 9 espers,
Mm.
each one with a different power. We have 10 here, and it's because Akito and another character had like half and half of the same power because reasons.
Sure.
Um, because apparently you can transfer powers here, but but you have to be compatible. Otherwise, you are dead. Your body doesn't like having the power in a way. So here we see someone from Koharu's past raising his ugly head again, being the reason of the world being in a shithole right now. And things happen, the group gets separated, and somehow they ended up like the route pretty much is more about Akito and Nanami than anything else. So like the entire second half of the plot, it's kind of like not unnecessary, but if the routes were longer, then I would get why you would add that because like okay, so I haven't talked about how many hours that this game has taken me to beat. So right now for my first playthrough it took me about 6 hours.
Right.
from beginning to end, one entire route. Each subsequent route has taken me 4 additional hours, with a couple of exceptions, which are maybe like the second or third character from some of the routes, being 3 hours and a half, more or less, give or take.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of time to develop anything. So yeah, so in a way, like, we have like this entire plot that revolves around their past, and then you pile on this little plate the other part of the plot, and it's like, dude, it doesn't work like that. So it becomes kind of like a hot mess. It ends up being like more of an excuse to have these two characters that share the same power like separated, and then pretty much they making up in the end and being like one happy family in a way.
Cool.
This route ends up with them not being able to take that important decision because the group has been split. But thankfully, they've managed to rescue like the other half of the group that was kind of like kidnapped in a way. And now on the another route of Nanamis, which is Ron. I already said I don't like this guy because he's everything your parents told you not to trust in a person. And like, he has given me this vibe ever since I first saw the character, like even before playing the game for the first time. I still say he's sus as fuck, and I wouldn't want him like in a kilometer radius, like near me. This route, it's like, I know more or less it's more about like the traitor because he's the traitor. But anyway, but it's also a little bit more about Nanami because um for like, since he's the traitor and he knows information about her past, but he doesn't say it directly. He's pretty much toying with her mind and planting the seed of doubt there. So it's painful, and also he's creepy, and I don't like this route. I dare already say I don't like this route. So I'm just trying to get this over with because I just want to jump to my favorite route. But anyway, so yeah, I am near the halfway point of the route where the dream sequence happens, and yeah, I would have loved to finish this one like in a more positive note. But the thing about Nord 9 is, if you come here for just the plot, I'm sorry, but the plot is a hot mess. But if you come here for the characters, yeah, come here.
Nice.
So yeah, like, I kind of wish, like, it's weird because some routes like kind of drag. Like, some routes have very good pacing, some routes don't, and they kind of like drag into like this one point where they could like be just doing the actual plot thing,
Yeah.
but they choose not to. So yeah, like, I still overall like the game more than not like the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think this game is for everyone.
Makes sense.
So like, if you tell me like, hey, what's a good otome game to recommend to a new player, this isn't it.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's everything that I've been playing. I went into quite a rant about the game, but I saved the best route for last.
Nice.
So yeah, at the very least, I'm gonna end in the happy note. Probably next week because I have like a little break from uni right now. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Just one other game I wanted to mention before we go on to the topic, which is How Long to Beat the Game, which I'm not sure if it was fully released last week when we spoke or not.
Oh yeah, it was.
But yeah, now it's all out there. It's all public. It's all ready to go. It's on the homepage of HLTB as soon as you load it up. And I just wanted to say again, I know I've kind of said it before, but big ups to Everdread for putting it together, because the power ups and everything, and even the like little share code that he's put together for when you're sharing stuff, so it doesn't spoil it, but it kind of still shows how well you did. Like, yeah, well done, Everdread. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is very well done. I don't play every day, but the days I've played, I stick to like 5 rounds or something like that, because it's like, oh no, I didn't get this one. Okay, I'm gonna get the next one then.
Yeah, I've been trying to play the daily challenge every day, but I'm pretty terrible at it, I have to admit. Like, sometimes I've got like every single time completely incorrect and the rating completely incorrect, and I have actually scored 0 on some games every now and then.
Yeah, me too.
Even with the power-ups.
And I'm not proud of that one, because even with the help, with the power ups, it's very
Yeah.
difficult.
But it's good fun though, and it's very, I like, because it's also very Helen to beat. Like, it's obviously inspired by the podcast and when you guys were playing it last season and all that kind of thing, but I like that it is very much a Helen to beat thing that you couldn't really do anywhere else, I suppose, because you're dealing with game times and that sort of stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to shout out again to Everdread. It's really cool, and I think it's been a lot of fun for the community and everyone as well, because everyone seems to be having fun and playing it a lot. So yeah, rock on. Check it out if you haven't already. If you're hearing this, it's actually a lot of fun when you get into it. But let us get on to our discussion topic for the week, which we are talking about disability representation in games. I just want to say at the top, we are not talking about accessibility for disabled gamers or that sort of thing, because that to me is an entirely different topic, which I do not feel very equipped to even begin talking about. Suffice to say, and I'm sure Paula will agree with me, that I very much support accessibility options and, all the wonderful different ways that there are for any disabled gamers to be able to enjoy games and that sort of thing, because of course we do.
Yeah.
Like, anything that helps people have fun with games is obviously a good thing in my book. And, whether it's different controllers or anything like that, then, obviously that's a good thing. But we're going to talk about actual representation of disabilities in games, and that could be physical disabilities or mental disabilities or any other kind of disability, I suppose. But I just wanted to go over, to begin with, there's a website called ablegamers.org, which is where I'm pulling this article from. And they have written a very quick kind of list of what they call problematic tropes in games. And it's kind of like how disabilities can be misrepresented or not necessarily represented in a good way, which, not to start on a negative note, but it kind of highlights what isn't good sometimes. And I think that's a good way to kind of start tackling it, because like, if you simply shove someone with a disability into a game without any reason or anything like that, that can be okay, but it can also not be good if you don't actually think about it. So yeah, there are a few different...
There's also the job where they do have like a disabled character, but it doesn't feel like a disabled character.
Yeah.
Like they kind of like shove it in because representation, but it would be like you could swap it with any other character and it wouldn't make any difference, because you're not. It's very much a character with skin.
Yeah, and that can be cool, because there's something to be said for, normalizing otherness, such as disabilities or, different cultures or different sexualities, all this kind of stuff, and just making it very normal and like not a big deal. But as I will, that's kind of why I thought this list of like problematic tropes was actually quite interesting, because it kind of highlights where some of those things cannot be good, such as, if I may. And as I say, this is from ablegamers.org, so look it up if you so desire. But just to briefly paraphrase over a few of them, one of them is obvious when disabled characters are used as objects of pity as in they're helpless or in need of help or aid. Because I think we can all understand that kind of reinforces the idea that disabled people are dependent on others and, unable to live their life in their own way and with their own autonomy. Kind of in a similar way, it's quite common, and I've found this as well. It's very much like a superhero thing where villains often have disabilities, where they may be
Yeah.
physically disabled or mentally disabled, and that kind of is part of their reason for being assholes, essentially. And that just seems weird because obviously that doesn't change anyone's, personality in that sense.
True.
But some other quick tropes as well is like the lack of complexity they highlight is that, often disabled characters are just a one note kind of character and their whole identity is that they're disabled, which is kind of problematic as well because obviously there's more to people than just whether, they have a disability or not. So it can make, it can reinforce that stereotype of the fact that if you are disabled, that's your entire identity and there's nothing more about you than just your disability, which I'm sure we all know is absolute bullshit. There's also the narrative of overcoming a disability. And this is one which I find interesting, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit later as well. But I think this is a very specific negative trope because for a character to overcome their disability is not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's presented as the only option and the only way for them to live a good life, then that's kind of a bad thing. Because obviously you can live a good life and have a, just as meaningful existence with a disability or not. But sometimes it's presented as like, oh, this is the challenge that this character overcame and that makes them a hero kind of thing. And it's like, not really.
That's another thing. Like, there's uh, okay, when you make it like the narrative of the thing to make them overcome their disability, it cements the idea that disabled people sometimes have, or like people with mental illnesses kind of have, like where they go like something is uh wrong with me to on a fundamental level, and I have to change
Yeah,
for the world to accept me, pretty much.
exactly. And, obviously that's not necessarily desirable. Also, just straight up misrepresentation of disabilities. They identify as a big problem where disabilities are often depicted inaccurately or without the depth that kind of comes along with it, which kind of leads to misunderstandings. And it's that kind of stereotype thing again where, there's no complexity to the character or anything. They're just literally, this is their disability, so therefore it means X. And I will say personally, I always get frustrated with certain depictions of depression because depression is something that I've dealt with myself in the past. And, well, in the past I still deal with, like it's a thing in my head. As much as it doesn't impact my daily life these days, but it used to quite a lot more. But depression is experienced very differently by many different people, and it's not just one thing. And so it often does frustrate me if people kind of portray something like depression and say, this is what depression is, this is what everyone who has depression experiences, and that's that. Because often I'll be like, well, that's not what I experienced with depression.
Yeah. On the depression note, like the other thing that sometimes happens in me in general is like, okay, this character is depressed, and with, I don't know, the power of love, they're not
Yeah,
depressed anymore. And it's like, dude, it doesn't work like that. Like, you could be getting out of depression, quote unquote, and something happens and you're thrown back
yeah.
in.
Well, and that's why I say, like, for myself, like, it's something that doesn't affect my daily life, but it's still something in my head because I'm
Yeah.
aware that it's something that can very easily slip into and definitely affects me. And I've, I'm happy to talk about how, I've had lots of counseling in the past and that sort of thing to give myself the tools and abilities to deal with depression and, live my life accordingly, or, in ways that it doesn't take over and it doesn't identify me and all that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what they're getting at here as well, because then the final kind of trope that they identify as a bad thing is just pure up tokenism. So having disabled characters or traits in a game purely for the sake of it, to be able to say, hey, look how diverse we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's easily understood as, well, that's kind of a bit of a problem as well. Like there's one thing for like we were saying at the beginning, like normalizing these things and including them as a normal part of life. Like, yes, there are disabilities in life. So if we want to represent life, we include disabilities as well. But if the purpose is to tick a box to say, hey, check out how diverse we are, that's kind of a problem as well, because that's like just bullshit.
Yeah, and sometimes there's like media in general where there's like the one character where they put all the things in the that are on the hey, we're what's the word,
Diverse?
we're diverse, like the we are diverse list, they put it like just one in a single character, and it's like
Yeah,
no.
you get the
Like,
the homosexual, trans, disabled, mental ill, foreigner person in all in one character.
yeah, it's like no, you can have more than one character.
Yeah, but I think as well, like and that's what I mean. Not to start on a negative kind of tack, but I think remembering those sorts of tropes, like how they cannot be good, is a good way to then start thinking about other ways where things might be good. And Paul, you had an interesting thing about kind of the fantasy side of disabilities or magic in that in games.
Oh yeah, so I was on Twitter one day and someone was commenting on, I think it was a webcomic about a magical character in a wheelchair. And people were like, well, if they know magic, why are they disabled?
Yeah.
And I think like most people understand like like fantasy magic as this be all and one solution for everything wrong with the world. And in some magical settings it may be the case, but most of the time it isn't. And even I was talking about this with a like, well, on magical settings in particular, I've seen more representation on anime, manga, and even like light novels and stuff like that rather than games.
Mm.
um there are like cases where they are like portrayed in games, but first of all, most of the time a magic system comes with pros and cons. So for example, in Full Metal Alchemist, you have these brothers that are learning alchemy and they lose their mother, but they know that everything comes with a cost, the law of equivalent exchange. So they try to bring back their mother. They fail, and one of them ends up as a soul trapped in a suit of armor, and the other one loses one arm and one leg.
Right.
And even though the one that loses one arm and a leg um, is able like to perform alchemy without the help of the magic circles that he's supposed to draw to be able to use it, he has to use automail an automail arm and leg, and they're like especially crafted so they're conductive, but but he cannot recover those limbs
Right.
without giving something in return. um and even though like, and it becomes a problem when the battle happens and he loses the automail limbs because he's pretty much useless at that point.
Yeah.
There is another example on Ascendance of a Bookworm that the magic system comes with a possible disability or like chronic illness in a way. That is that magic is like pretty much a thing that happens in stability, that they are all born with mana. But sometimes a kid in the a child in the commoner side of the city is born with what is known as the devouring. So they pretty much have mana, but since they do not have the tools to let that mana out when they're children, they usually die.
Right.
Because that magic pretty much like consumes them from the inside out. So it's pretty much an illness that it's born from the magic system. And even like if you're like close to dying or like had a very close encounter with death, it can happen that you have like mana clamps on your body and you have to make a very specific potion to get rid of them, which requires magic to collect the ingredients of.
Yeah.
So yeah, like not because you have a magic system in your preferred media of choice, it doesn't mean that disabilities cannot happen.
Yeah.
Because usually, like curing those disabilities comes with a cost. Like in the Dragon Prince, where you have to use black magic to recover, like to make someone with uh, a paraplegic, a paraplegic character recover, you need to use dark magic or black magic. I don't know how it's called.
Yeah.
And that comes with a cost on your own body. So it's like people usually don't resort to those things because it is harmful to them and it can be harmful to others.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is my tech talk about why if magic weight is stable is not a thing.
Well, I think in a way, like that different perception of disability kind of makes me think of different perceptions in the real world as well. Like just to step outside of games a bit, but I know that different mental illnesses and or physical disabilities basically have different, I want to say reputations, or just they're just seen differently by different cultures. Because especially like there's this one particular person I'm thinking of who I'm not going to go into, but anyway, they're a famous person with schizophrenia, and so in the West they're basically painted as being insane, but they're from they're originally from Jamaica, I think, and in Jamaica they're viewed as basically a prophet, like someone who is literally straight talking to God, and is here to tell us about things that we mortals cannot comprehend, kind of thing. And I think that's a very kind of I don't want to say common, but it's not, that's not the first time I've heard of that interpretation of kind of mental illness, like hearing voices, seeing visions, that kind of thing, where I know in my Australian / very English / Americanized culture, that sort of thing is seen as a bad thing, and that there's something wrong with you. Speaking very generally, I don't necessarily agree with that, but anyway. Whereas in a lot of other cultures, it's seen as, oh wow, this person is like touched by God, or has some kind of vision into the other world that we humans cannot comprehend, kind of thing, and isn't that great? And we need to kind of look up to this person and listen to what they have to say, because they're just on a whole other different plane of existence, kind of thing. And I think that's really interesting, because it kind of shows how a lot of it is also down to just interpretation and perception, and these things that we take as facts may not actually be that factual, and maybe cultural, or other stuff like that.
Yeah, and even like neurodivergencies, for example. Well, nowadays, since we have like a very structured way of living, I guess.
Yeah.
So neurodivergencies like ADHD or uh, ADD are pretty much seen as a hindrance, and they are. Like, I suffer from both, and the day-to-day life, it can be a struggle if you don't have the accommodations for it.
Yeah.
You are taught, like, I've been working for a while with a psychologist or neurologist and stuff like that. I am medicated. I am working on different ways to get around things, but still, it is still a thing.
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, hey, by the like by terms of evolution, you use like if you have like a harmful gene on the gene pool, that gene usually gets weeded out in a few generations. And if it's useful, that gene will prevail. The thing is that not too long ago there has been like theories and studies that may suggest that people with AT, since they're like more aware of their surroundings and they can like pick things from the um, they immediately pick things like from the environment.
Yeah.
They may have been more fitted, for example, as a hunter gatherer, like just as a gatherer,
Yeah.
because they see things or like they see like the bigger picture, but also as guards. So while the rest of the group is doing something, the person with ADHD is like a meerkat standing there and looking around, and they immediately see a hint of movement and put everyone on high alert.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know about eye stuff in the sense of the is it Dalton color blindness? Like what could have been that make it like stick pretty much in our gimple.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting that something that nowadays makes life quite a struggle may have been useful in a different context.
Totally. Well, and I think it just kind of, to me, it just kind of like leans into the whole idea that, you know, human life is diverse anyway. and
Yeah,
human life is there's a whole range and spectrum and whatever of people and experiences and, you know, ideas and perspectives and all that. And I think, you know, if you can see the vast differences between just simply cultural perspectives, which is just purely where you happen to be,
yeah,
it that in itself kind of shows how diverse things can be. And then you put on the fact that yes, everyone thinks about things differently and, you know, has different experiences and different emotional responses and different chemical makeups in their head or whatever. It's, you know, it's no surprising to me that there are a whole range of different kind of people around who are not necessarily I guess the point is that they're all just everyone is as um part of the whole society as much as anyone else kind of thing. Like, yeah,
yeah.
even if you are a minority or you're feeling different or whatever, that's part of what makes up human life in the first place. So, you know, still perfectly valid to have those people around. And yeah, like you say, there's a reason for it as well, perhaps, that, you know, maybe other people miss out on, you know.
True, true.
But then, so we'll think about some games where there are disabled characters or characters with disabilities, I should say, who you know, we think probably are good representations. But obviously, this is our kind of interpretation of it. So if you disagree, please let us know and like let us know why and everything. Or if you have any other characters to add after we've talked about this, please let us know as well, because it's very interesting, I think. And when talking about diversity, the more kind of diverse options you have to talk about, I think the better, because yeah, there's always going to be something that you miss or didn't think about. But in a very weird way, one of the first disabled characters I always think of when I think of disability in games is the lead character who you play as in The Surge, which is the kind of sci-fi Dark Souls game. Because it's only a thing at the beginning, but at the very, very start of the game, your character is in a wheelchair. And half the reason they are going to do the job that they're going to do, which kind of sets off the whole game, is that they're going to take basically a mining job or something on a different planet. And part of that is because they get to wear this whole exoskeleton kind of suit, which allows them to walk and function outside of his wheelchair and contribute and work and kind of earn his living that way. And, you know, within minutes it becomes very horrific and then the rest of the game kind of plays out. But I just think it's very interesting because I remember when that game came out and I watched people play like just the very opening sequence on YouTube and stuff, the fact that he was in a wheelchair kind of stood out for a lot of people because it was one of those games where you hadn't really played as a main character who was in a wheelchair before, even if it is only for a short
Yeah,
time.
definitely.
So it kind of felt like, wow, okay, this is something different and interesting and kind of cool because, hey, this is just something different. And if you're like me, I like different things about games. One of the things I like about games in general is just the variety and the difference that you can get in there. So, this kind of representation is always good as well. But yeah, that's kind of like one of the very simple ones where it wasn't like the game is not about disability at all. The game, I don't think anything really hinges on the fact that the lead character is a paraplegic, but it's just kind of there and it's kind of part of his character without it being his whole character. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
nice kind of little element to say, hey, this is part of his reasoning for being there, even though once you get past that, it's not really a focus in the game anyway. But I think it was done in a nice way where it's kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. And that would be, it seems like an authentic kind of way for the character to get started. But yeah, it doesn't kind of ham it up by making it too much of a focus, I suppose.
In my case, you talk about like positive like representation, but I also see like representation like I don't know if positive per se in the sense of oh, this person is fine despite their disability or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like we have characters that are the way they are, either because they have or like they make a specific mistake, for example,
Yeah.
because they have that specific disability. So, for example, Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations. The prosecutor of this game is Godot. Godot, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Godot, I think, is right.
Godot. And he has this headgear because reasons. He cannot see without it,
Yep.
but it has the restriction that he cannot. I don't remember if he cannot like just distinguish red, like in general.
Right.
I think it's more like he cannot see red over white or something like that. It's something among those lines.
Yeah.
So since Ace Attorney is about crimes and stuff like that and solving stuff, there's actually like pieces of evidence that Kojo doesn't quite see because of his disability.
Yeah.
And it ends up playing like a big part on the final chapter of the game. But the way that it's like, oh yeah, it is that way. And you have to keep that in mind when you're discussing about evidence.
Mm.
It's like a very interesting way in which the disability is more it matters in like how the cases play out, but also like the other characters are like, oh, remember this guy doesn't see red, so we have to explain to him when we have this particular piece of evidence that he doesn't quite get, which is interesting.
Yeah. No, I think so. And I think that kind of it. I think there's always this thing with difference or otherness that we feel like if we focus on it and talk about it, it can be like a bad thing because you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of making a novelty of it in a way. And sometimes that's true, which is a bad thing. But I think stuff like that is kind of interesting where it kind of adds another little wrinkle to the complexity of the character because
Yeah.
it's not just necessarily tokenistic or anything. It is kind of, yeah, there's this character and there's all their characterization about them, but then there's also this other thing as well, which kind of adds to it just to make it that little bit more realistic, a little bit more interesting because I think people are that complex anyway. And
Yeah.
so it is all these things that kind of go in to make up the kind of person they are and the kind of way they approach stuff. And similarly, one of the other ones that I thought I liked as well was May's character in Night in the Woods, who's the lead character. And she has, I've read a number of times they've identified basically her mental illness as having dissociative disorder. Whatever the hell that means, really. But because again, I'm sure it's kind of different for everybody. But I like the way she's portrayed in this game because it's never about mental illness per se. It's
Yeah.
about her being different and, not necessarily connecting with things in a way that she's expected to connect with things and or people.
Yeah.
So, she's coming back to her hometown and she's reconnecting with all these friends and her parents and, all the people in the small town who know who she is and has known her for her whole life. And then she went away and now she's come back. And she she seems a bit antisocial perhaps, or seems like she doesn't want to necessarily get along with certain people or has different ideas about things than most people. And
Yeah.
she obviously does not fit in. And as someone who never felt like I really fit in as a kid as well, I kind of connect with that sort of thing on at least some level, as much as there's a lot about the character which I don't connect with, but that's okay because, again, that's part of the diversity and complexity of it all. But I really like the fact that the game was never about mental illness, but it was about difference and not feeling like you do fit in or that kind of thing. Because I'm going to get a bit old man for a second, but one of the things that I remember from when I was younger, back in the 80s and 90s, the perception of mental illness and everything was definitely not as good as it is today. Like, I will say that for a fact. Like, we all know more things.
Yeah.
We all have better ideas about things. We're more accepting and all that kind of stuff. But there is a couple of things which I think were better back in the day, where, especially when I was in school, and there was no real need or desire to kind of label everything as much. So people didn't get pigeonholed as quickly, I think. And so there were definitely kids in my year and everything at school who, for want of a better word, they were like the odd kids in the bunch. And I was probably one of them as well. But people didn't worry so much about what made them odd or why they were odd or why they were different or anything like that. It was more just, oh yeah, they're a bit different to most other people. Whatever. And like, that was okay because no one really cared. It was just like, hey, let's all hang out anyway and have some fun and, whatever. you're just that kid who's just a bit different. Okay, cool. We still accept you kind of thing. And we're still happy to have you around. And, one of my best friends was always kind of a bit of an oddball kind of character. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it was better then at all, because in this particular case, this particular friend of mine, it was only when he was in his 30s that he was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum and all this kind of thing. And that actually helped him a lot because it helped him figure out why he felt the way he did about certain things and, all that kind of thing. So it was definitely better now than then for him. However, at the same time, I quite enjoy when groups of people are just accepted for their diversity and for their differences and all that kind of thing without needing to necessarily say, oh, well, you're this person and you're that person and you're this difference and you're that difference. And I think that's kind of what I liked about Night in the Woods, because especially with the main character, May, and her friends, who were all a bit oddballs in their own way, they all kind of accepted each other just for who they were and hung out, and they were all quite different anyway, but still got along. And that was something I related to, because for me, that was kind of my experience with my friends when I was young, where we were all a bit kind of weird and we didn't really fit into the mainstream kind of mold. So that in itself was kind of enough for us to get along and kind of like each other and kind of go, hey, yeah, we're all a bit different, but who gives a shit kind of thing. Like,
Like I was like the other kid on my classroom. So since their school was very small, like every classroom has like that one odd kid.
yeah.
So those odd kids like gang up together and very much like spend time together. So I have like other three weird kids from everyone from a different classroom that were like, yeah, we don't fit it with our classmates, so let's get along together.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, these days, I think it is definitely better for mental health in general because we know more, we accept more, we kind of, the stigma's less, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, people can get like people can get treatment earlier in a way,
Yeah,
and and in that regard it's good, but it's a double-edged sword because if someone walks up to you and says, "Yeah, I have ADHD or I'm in the spectrum," you already have preconceived notions about that.
exactly. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, again, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here, because it's a difficult thing to say, because I don't want to sound like I'm saying it was better back in the day or anything, but I think there was definitely an element of human beings are different and diverse. So if you're not a dickhead, you kind of accept that, and you just kind of accept people for who they are anyway, and you don't try and change them. You just kind of go, yeah, cool, whatever. And that could be anything. That could be like culture, sexuality, anything like that. But especially with mental illness or physical disabilities or anything, just accepting people for who they are, I think, is perhaps in some ways a bit easier if you don't have labels, because you can't put people in a box. But it's also perhaps not as good for those people, because, you know, you can get better help and everything, and there's better understanding these days and that sort of thing. But anyway, bit of a tangent, but but I think there's a lot of other good representations of disabilities in games. Like there's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is like the second, I think, Spider-Man game, because there's been 3, even though there's like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 of the modern games. I mean, like not
Overall, it's just,
not the original ones, but the newer games. And there's a character in it who's a deaf character called Haley. And the cool thing about this character, which I really like as well, was that because they're deaf, they speak in American Sign Language. And Miles Morales, as a character, understands sign language and signs back to her, and they have like some conversations and stuff. And it's not, again, it's not like made to be a big thing. It's just kind of there as like, this is what this character, like, you know, this character has obviously a hearing disability. So it's cool that Miles Morales understands sign language as well, to be able to communicate with her and just kind of, you know, get on as you normally would with anyone else. And yeah, I always liked that character, and I thought it was a good kind of a good way of showcasing disability, as far as, again, they don't really make a big song and dance about it. It just kind of is part of this character, and not even the part that they focus on, but it's just, you know, easily done, and they kind of get on with the story kind of thing, which I thought was nice.
yeah. Another example that I have, and this one is mental illness territory. So I already talked about how Virtue of More Salvation is 100% mess, mainly because of the topics of the game of people living up to 23 years of age because curse, quote unquote, illness that plagues the country and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help like that the main character of the game, even if it is not quite spelled to you, has depression.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, it actually kind of like moves the plot in the game in a way because something happens at the beginning of the game where she pretty much can't take it anymore. So she goes and try to end it all for herself.
Yep.
And uh, in the in what is called Act One, you kind of see the thing, but in Act Two, she gets stopped by someone else. Very much like is stuck into trying to give like a second chance of life. And uh, even though it's not like she gets cured from this person like magically,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how she progresses through the game. Because with mental illnesses like depression, it's not like getting over a cold in the sense of, oh, I'm all better now after a couple of days of treatment.
Yeah.
You tend to fall back into it if things go bad for you in life and stuff like that, and things really affect you,
Mm.
or even if you can fall back into it given like certain circumstances, whatever.
Mm.
So in that regard, in Weird, it's kind of like treated in a more realistic way because of that. Because even though Teres it's getting like better through the game, finding like her place to be and pretty much a reason to be alive at this point, something that ties her to the earth. There are times where dark things happen and bad thoughts come back crashing in, and someone pretty much has to like ground her again because it is a very it's kind of like an iterative or recursive thing that happens like,
Mm.
but each cycle gets like each episode of depression pretty much gets like further and further away, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
uh so yeah, in that regard, like the game really, it really hits some notes pretty close to home, because at some time I had depression too, and it was not okay. And part of the reason I was connecting like so much with Ceres and the other characters, it was because well, first of all, I tend to put myself too much in the shoes of other people to my own detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
But also it was like, Ceres, I get you, but you can do it. And at the time, I was just cheering for her to please someone help her because she's not okay
Yeah. Yeah.
right now, and I'm like begging for a character to show up and help her because she, she's like a very sweet character, but she has this very bad thing happening to her, so it's like kind of painful. So yeah,
Mm. Well, I think that's why I like, and people would have heard me talk about before as well, like little short indie games where it's obviously the developer is talking about some sort of experience or maybe a mental health issue or anything like that that's very personal
yeah,
to themselves, and they're kind of telling that story. Because I do think that experiences are very personal to us and very different between us, but there are common threads that you can always kind of connect with. And, you know, even if it is just feeling different and out of place, or, you know, like you don't really understand other people very well or things like that. I'm sure many of us have shared those emotions. Um,
yeah,
but on a more kind of like physical side, I guess, and this might be funny to some people, but one of the, I think, really, and maybe I'm wrong, and no, please tell me if I am, but I do think the game Katawa Shoujo, which is an old dating sim, sexy times visual novel game from a long time ago, but it actually has a lot of physical disability and mental disability in the game, because the whole premise of the game is that your character is a dude who has like a heart problem. So you've got a very weak heart, and that's your kind of physical disability. So if you overexert yourself and that kind of thing, you'll have like a heart attack. And this has happened to you a few times, and you've ended up in hospital. So you end up going to this quote unquote special school, which is built and caters for people with various disabilities. So it's, you know, has all the support networks and that sort of thing that you might need if you have a serious disability. So then he's surrounded by a whole bunch of students who have a very diverse range of disabilities, both physical and mental. And it's a dating sim, so, you know, he meets a bunch of other characters who he's, you know, kind of interested in, and gets to know very intimately and personally, not just for sexy times, but also just part of the story. And the bit that I really liked about it was a lot of the characters, it takes a while for them to open up about how they feel about their disability, and they talk about what it means to them and how they want to be treated and or not treated and that kind of thing. Because, for instance, one of the characters has no legs, but she's really into running and being an athlete, so she's got prosthetics to allow her to run and that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
she initially is very, very standoffish about anyone even mentioning that she's disabled. But then when you get to know her in your character and stuff, she kind of opens up a bit more and you find out there's more complexity behind it and all that kind of thing. And, they talk about what it means to her to not have legs, but also be very sporty and kind of athletic as a person. Like that's just what she's into and all that kind of thing. There's the other character who's like the super attractive popular girl who doesn't have any visible disabilities, but when they get to know her and stuff, she does have like depression and anxiety that's very serious. And again, they explore kind of what that means and why that kind of may be and all this kind of stuff. And because of that approach to disability, I always think of that game as actually quite good as far as the way it represents disability, because disability is very much a central theme to that game. So it's very much focused on it, but not in a for the sake of diversity kind of way, because that is what the game is essentially about, is people
Yeah.
dealing with their disabilities and the things or they may perceive at first as holding them back, but which also then kind of opens them up to other opportunities and other things which they maybe wouldn't have been able to get to without the disability. So on one hand, it doesn't kind of make a novelty of it because it kind of takes it seriously enough to say, hey, there's more to it. And for starters, just because someone doesn't open up to you about it when the first time you meet them doesn't mean that there isn't more going on. That if you did get closer to them and did get to know them and did, build trust and a relationship with them, they might open up to you about. But there's also the thing where maybe they don't want to open up to you as well. Like it's up to them. Like it's got nothing to do with you. and I kind of like that as well, because it is very much a personal thing, and nobody should have to talk about something if they don't want to, or it shouldn't change how you treat them or respect them or interact with them. And for that reason, I thought that game was actually very well kind of put together, and one of the most probably memorable kind of visual novel dating games that I've ever played. Not that I've played heaps, but it was definitely more interesting than Love Is All Around, which I played recently, which was just a bit shit. But yeah, I do think it is a bit of a lull, because it's like, yeah, dating sim and everything, and there is the whole sexy times element to it. But I really like the way they told the story and kind of built each character, because there are other characters who are, they've got like noticeable burn scars over their whole body. So that's kind of not, I guess it is a disability perhaps, I'm not really sure, but that's the thing that's kind of holding them back. Like they're very self-conscious and they're very, they don't have very good self-image or confidence or anything about themselves because of that. And there's, characters who are missing limbs and everything, but then there's other characters who are, in a wheelchair perhaps, or who have crutches, or, just a whole lot of diversity in the world of especially physical disabilities. And I think, yeah, it's a really interesting game because it tries to at least talk about them and explore the ins and outs of each one. And there are kind of bad endings where if your character kind of, I guess, doesn't just accept people for who they are, you kind of get a bad ending, because you don't end up actually getting that close to someone, because you might even, and sometimes it can be because you're trying to force too much out of them. Like you've chosen dialogue options which are like, tell me about your disability now, kind of thing. And their character is like, well, I don't really want to, so no, I'm not gonna. Like, and it's not up to you. And I kind of like that. So yeah, I'd say it's an interesting one to check out if you haven't. But I would also put the big, adult content warning over that game, because there's a lot of it. So keep that in mind if you wish to venture further. But yeah.
Another one that is a physical disability is from The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince.
Mhm.
This one is kind of interesting because, again, in this game, the quote unquote princess is actually like a wolf that likes to sing to the moon.
Oh, cool.
And this little human prince goes every night and hear her sing.
Nice.
It's a very like storybook kind of setting, but the prince tries to see who is singing. She gets scared and ends up blinding him
Right.
with her claws. So in that regard, she ends because she realizes that she permanently harmed him
Mm.
and that he is pretty much out of the competition for the throne because of that, and he's not very treated kindly by his family. She decides, hey, I'm gonna go and try to the witch in the forest and ask her to to help him very much.
Yeah.
Because in this particular setting, since it's a more medieval kind of thing, like no ice is kind of bad, especially if you're supposed to be like the first prince that is gonna inherit the throne and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the witch is like, yeah, I can heal him, but you have to bring him to me. And in order to do that, she traded her singing voice that she can still talk, but she cannot sing
Mm-hmm.
as pretty as she used to sing, for a human form, which is the princess. So she very much is the liar princess because she lies about who she is,
Mm.
and she hides the fact that she's the one that got him blind in the first place. But she is doing everything in her power for him to recover his old life. Um, so the game is pretty much an entire escort mission with platforms and puzzles, just everyone's favorite.
Nice.
But as time goes on, and you not necessarily get more abilities, but it's more like since you're working together and the prince is getting used to not seeing
Mm.
in a way, you're able to give him like a little bit of independence on some parts, and he's even able to help. So, for example, the well, sometimes only one of you can walk through a certain place at a time,
Yeah.
or you have to press, I don't know, two switches or something like that. So first, like at first, you have to grab his hand and pretty much walk him everywhere. But if you want to fight enemies, you have to turn. You have to let go of his hand and turn into a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot hold his hand while you're a wolf because, well, war flashbacks would come back into his mind. Uh, but at some point, you're able to give him instructions, like to walk up to a certain place, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he becomes even a little bit more independent in that regard and is able to help. And at some point, you have to have him carry stuff
Mm-hmm.
because the wolf is scared of fire. So she cannot carry like a little lantern with a fire in there. So you have to ask the prince to bring the fire
Yep.
and give him instructions to do the thing. So in that regard, even though the whole journey is to make him go back to his old life and him being getting his vision back, it's not like he's completely useless in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's even able to open up to the wolf and during the adventures. It's kind of sweet in that
Mm.
regard.
Well, I like that as well in the way that, like, as two characters who perhaps, if they could both see each other, they might not give each other a chance. Like,
Yeah,
but because of that quote unquote disability, they have to think about things differently. So maybe get to know each other better, just based on other things other than visual kind of cues, which I always think is an interesting idea.
yeah, definitely.
But I like how that kind of brings brings it into part of the gameplay as well, like you say, the puzzles and stuff and how to kind of proceed, because it makes me think of another one I played called Beyond Eyes, which is where you play this little girl who is blind, and that very much is the game mechanic. So
Mhm.
the whole world is, you're basically it's a third person game where you're playing as this little girl, but the entire world is just blank white, and it's only as
Uh,
noises happen, those parts of the world kind of appear. So there might
yeah.
be like a bird chirping in a tree, so suddenly this tree will appear and you know that there's a tree there and that there's a bird in the tree. And as you walk along, like your feet might make the sound of you're walking on stones, so you can you see that there's a stone path that you're walking on, or you might hear some like traffic, so you know, okay, there's a road over there. And that's how you kind of navigate around the world, is by essentially exploring, but you're totally focused on what you can hear to kind of paint the world before you. And as a player, it kind of then appears on screen as you kind of hear things. And that's basically how you navigate the game and make your way through it. And I really like that because it kind of ties the experience of this blind character directly into the gameplay mechanics and the systems. And it's the whole kind of challenge of the game is to kind of experience the world without vision being the first thing that you have to give you clues and kind of show you where to go. So as much as I'm sure it's very abstracted and it's not like the actual experience of a blind person anyway, um, it's a interesting concept because it kind of gets you thinking about those sorts of things and how your other senses can tell you more information perhaps than you give it credit for, even, or stuff like that. And I think that's kind of a really cool idea. And like everything with speaking about gaming in particular, I like it when things get tied into gameplay mechanics as part of the narrative is directly related to the buttons you're pushing, kind of thing. Because I always think that's kind of the strength of games, obviously, is it kind of can connect you directly with whatever it is that your character is experiencing. So yeah.
Which brings us to the whole reason we decided to make this episode, and that is the Spiritfarer controversy.
Yeah, so
Would you kindly explain it?
so before I quickly explain what happened with Spiritfarer, because that is what kind of made us think about talking about this stuff, I do just want to say that we're obviously not experts in this field, and we are just trying to make our best attempt at discussing these things because we think they should be discussed, and we think there's something to be gotten from having these discussions. So I know myself when I'm talking about these things, sometimes I'm also thinking in my head, gee, that didn't come out the way you meant it or whatever. So I apologize if anything is kind of clumsy, or if I have said the wrong thing or whatever. It is not intentional, and I am trying to, just kind of get thoughts into words, really. And yeah, so I'm sorry if I've messed it up at all, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
But Spiritfarer, which for those who don't know is a game about you play a character who has a boat, and you travel around this world picking up other characters who get onto your boat, and your whole job is to ferry them to a gate to the afterlife. So the idea is that you're seeing them through their last moments of life and helping them transition into death. Very cheery topic, of course. But brilliant game, I have to say. But one thing that I remember from this game, because I played it, I think I played a demo, or I played like an early access version or something while it was being developed, and that's what kind of hooked me into it, because I was like, wow, this is great. I want to play more. But just before the game was released, or just, no, I think it was just as it was released, one of the characters that you ferry to the afterlife was in a wheelchair and was a disabled character. And I think this is an interesting story to think about, because I can see both sides of the story that then became this controversy. And I'm not really sure exactly who I agree with or where I fall. So that's why I think it's an interesting discussion topic. But essentially, as this character then passed away and moved on to the afterlife in this game, there was a line of dialogue that said something like, basically they were happy to leave, or they were not necessarily happy, but they were ready to die and they were ready to kind of leave their physical form. And they said something about how they'd be happy to never see their wheelchair ever again, or to that effect, where basically after they die and they move on to the afterlife, their disability would no longer be a thing because their physical form they'd be leaving behind. And so they made a comment that was basically like, fuck that wheelchair, I'm out of here, I'm ready to move on. Which was essentially the spirit of what they said. I can't remember what the exact line was, but whatever. And of course the internet did the internet and decided to turn this into a big controversial thing about how ableist it was and anti-disability it was, because how dare they suggest that this character would be happy to leave their wheelchair behind, because that suggests that there's something wrong with them having been in a wheelchair and all this kind of thing. And I can see where they're coming from. I'm not going to lie. I don't necessarily agree with it either, I have to say. But yeah, there was this big outcry to the point that they got harassed so much online that the developers just took the entire disability part of this character, they just kind of removed it from the game. So they updated it so then the character was no longer in a wheelchair, no longer said this thing about their disability, which I think was the only thing they actually ever said about their disability. Otherwise, they were just in a wheelchair, and that was just a thing that, wasn't focused on necessarily or wasn't harped on about. And they just removed it basically to keep everyone, quote unquote happy, because lots of people were complaining about it.
Pretty much so they wouldn't have people with pitchforks and torches.
And I can
outside of their city.
Yeah, and I can understand that and totally get behind it, because at the end of the day, who wants to be harassed online by thousands and thousands of people?
Yeah.
And maybe it's
not a good time.
Yeah, maybe it's not the hill they wanted to die on, and I don't blame them for that. But then part of me was also like, I don't think there was anything wrong with what they did in the first place, because they weren't saying that this character was depressed their whole life because they were in a wheelchair. They were just saying that, yeah, when this character, and remember, in this game, the afterlife is a fact. It's not like a belief or anything. It's a thing.
Yeah.
The whole point of the game is that you're helping people transition from the physical world into the afterlife. So there's not even a question about it, whether they will get there or not. The fact is that's where they're going. So,
yeah.
So this character knows for a fact that he's not going to have his wheelchair anymore. And I don't think it's unreasonable for someone to say, or for a disabled character for that matter, to say, hey, I'm going to be happy when I no longer have to deal with my disability.
Yeah.
So I think about it myself as far as having had depression and that kind of thing. As much as I'm not sitting around every day going, woe is me, depression, oh dear, that's who I am, blah, 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 because I don't think about it from day to day. But if I knew that there was something was going to happen and I would never even have to think about it ever again, that would be appealing to me. Like, I would probably think, hey, this is a good thing. How cool is that? Kind of like I'm a big guy, I'm a bit overweight. So I know this is a little bit different, but if I found out tomorrow that actually now they've done something and they've patched my DNA, that I can now eat whatever the fuck I want and I'll be trim and sexy for the rest of my life, I'd probably be like, hey, that's a good thing. Cool. Let's do that. Not that I'm bothered by the fact that I'm a big guy right now. And, I am what I am. Who cares? I don't really give a shit. But I'd still be happier if something better came along, put it that way. Like,
yeah. Especially, like, it rings especially true if you've been like for example, if this character was alive in a time without the need of the wheelchair, and then he got into the wheelchair, and it's like, oh yeah, I can kiss this thing goodbye. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you miss the times where you were not depending on the thing, And if you are able to not be dependent on the thing, it is very happy time. And the other thing that I feel it's a thing that people do not really take into account is that not all places are fitted or like prepared for people in a wheelchair.
Oh, exactly.
So even though like it wouldn't normal like let's say like this person has been disabled their whole life. Maybe they don't really care about it in the sense of I don't miss walking because I never walked. But holy crap, it's very inconvenient that we don't have an actual fucking lifter here
Yeah.
for me to get to the classroom, which happened to a classmate of mine.
Yeah.
And he actually had to get like someone had to take his wheelchair, another someone had to carry him to the second floor of a building because the lift was not the elevator was not working.
Yeah.
And it's not like disabilities really get to you and you realize you have to depend on other people for you to live your life, in my opinion. And there's also the fact that not all streets are good for people with disabilities. Like I've seen people like going uphill here, like on the street, because the actual place where people walk is on a state of disarray, so they cannot go there with their wheelchair.
Yeah.
And on a personal note, I actually had to use the crutches or the thing you use to walk.
Yeah.
Because I had a surgery, and I was stuck on walking on those things for a whole month, and another month with just one. And it didn't matter to me until I had to leave the house because first of all there's people who are assholes.
Yeah.
So for example, I got into the bus and I was like, hey, I kind of need a seat because given my situation I could really fall and have a really bad time
Yeah.
and need surgery again. And people either don't care about that or like don't like all the seats were like taken by I don't know either old people or people with mobility issues. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this other seat. And there was a seat by the window, and this lady didn't want to move for his seat for me to get there,
Nice.
or like for me to get off or something like that. I was like, of course you're gonna feel your disability is a burden to you and to society.
Yeah.
If one, first of all, structures are not built for you to live independently, and also people are fucking assholes that
Yeah.
they're not accommodating to you because, like, come on, you see someone barely walking, why don't the fuck don't you let them sit?
Yeah. Well,
So yeah.
and I think that's kind of comes back to what disappointed me about this whole controversy, or the fact that it was a controversy, was because it kind of, in my mind, it diminished every person in a wheelchair to having the same experience, which
Yeah.
I don't agree with, obviously, because I've said it before already. But it kind of, I'm sure there are some people in wheelchairs who love their life and are going, hey, I don't want to change anything, and if I had the choice, I would still be disabled or whatever. You know, I'm sure those people exist, and that's great. Good on them. That's fucking rad. However, I'm sure there are other people, because I've met them too, who are in a wheelchair who are like, oh yeah, if given the option, I'd tell this thing to fuck off, sure. But you know, not having the option, I'm also accepting of it and happy with my life too. And you know, it's not like you have to be either depressed or happy one way or the other. But you know, it's a different experience for everybody. So the fact that this particular character in this game was happy to see the end of having to use a wheelchair, I don't think personally it should have really been that much of a controversy, because at the very least, people should have maybe said, well, that's not the same experience for everyone. And I would have agreed with that,
Yeah.
definitely. Rather than just say...
Don't go harassing the developers over it, for fuck's
Well,
sake.
because I think it's a shame, because then we ended up with a game that didn't even think about disability at all. Because it just removed it from the game to keep people happy. And I think that's more of a shame than perhaps not presenting every single interpretation of what it's like to be in a wheelchair. So, yeah.
And also, the other thing that kind of pisses me off is that sometimes something happens, and I don't know, the quote unquote affected group, in this case, people who live and are in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
are not the ones who are mad.
Yeah, exactly.
The ones who are mad is like everyone who doesn't have that experience.
Exactly.
And it's dumb because it's like, okay, why are you being such a white knight if the group in question doesn't care at all, or even they're happy about some kind of representation?
Exactly. And I think that's why it's a shame that, you know, because of that kind of the internet shouting at them, and I don't blame the developers for it at all, really, but I just think it's disappointing. But yeah, because the internet shouted at them, instead of having a game that is not only a really good game anyway about just humanity and death and life, but it could have had that kind of aspect of having a disabled character, but they had to basically just remove it so that they didn't get hate, which which just kind of, you know, points to a whole lot of problems when it comes to how we think about disability and everything anyway.
True.
But yeah, that event is what kind of got us thinking about disability in games anyway. So, you know, please let us know what your opinions are, dear listener. And, you know, be respectful and be kind and you know, nice about it. But I'm always certainly open to hearing other perspectives, and you know, even if you think we're wrong or something, tell us why and explain it, because hey, I'm here to learn as well, and I'm sure Paula's the same.
True. Yeah. If you have any experience, or if you have like any other game that tackles such themes, we would be happy to know about them.
Definitely. But let's leave the heaviness of serious real world topics for now and see if you can stump me with a game.
Okay, so this game, I remember correctly from this other tab. Yeah. This game, for the main story, takes around 15 hours and a half.
Ooh.
And where is it? This comment, it's about 14 hours, so it's not too under the average.
Mm-hmm.
It says ignored a lot of the side missions, focused almost entirely on green missions. Green as the color green.
Yeah. Green missions, you say? So there are missions of different colors. I'm guessing... Sorry?
It does seem that way.
I'm guessing maybe it could be kind of linear, but you can choose different... Like maybe you get given like 3 different types of missions that you can choose one from. And maybe green missions, I would assume maybe like the easy ones. Which then makes me kind of think, could it be like a... could it be like a tower defense? Oh, or is it... Oh, hello. It's not something like Abyss Odyssey?
No, it is not.
Okay. Because that game is like a roguelite where there's like... You get some choice on like the path you go. So you can choose like a harder path or a easier path. So I'm thinking maybe it's something like that. Maybe it is like a tower defense kind of thing. Shit.
I love how for a moment you were like, oh, hello, like saying hello to your idea, and it was like, oh no, I think he got it. It was.
No. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Oh no, go away. It felt like a stroke of genius at the time. But it obviously was not. Good game though, Abyss Odyssey. I'd recommend it to anyone who likes roguelites. But anyway, green missions. Focused almost entirely on green missions. Ignored a lot of the side missions. So there's side missions too. Man, that could be any kind of game. Green missions. Green, green, green. I feel like that's the key though. Because even like... it's not like a Grand Theft Auto kind of game. Would it be?
No. Not in the series.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, I don't mean like open world in general. I just mean like... Because I know those missions can appear as different colors depending on... But that's depending on what character you are or that kind of thing. Maybe it is an open worldy kind of game. And I need to think of more open worldy games. Side missions always makes me think of open worldy games. They got lots of them. Green missions. Could it be something like The Division?
No.
Okay, because they have missions. Because my thinking of that is that their missions are based on your level. So if it's too high a level for you, it's like a red. But if it's like correct level for you, it's, I don't know if it is a green, but it would be something that's more like a green or like a friendly color. But then I think it could be like an MMO, like World of Warcraft or something. Because, yeah. But Paula's kind of laughing at me at the moment in her own little way. So
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Yeah, I'm either like completely far off or kind of dancing around it. I can't tell which, so that's not really helpful. But there's so many ways that it could be green. Is it something like I don't remember, so this is just a total stab in the dark really, but like a Horizon Zero Dawn?
No.
No, okay. I just remember there being color-coded stuff in that. No, I think I'm going to need a second hint here.
Okay. I kind of want to give you a funny one because you kind of like dance around it a little bit.
All right, go on.
This person played the game on PlayStation 3.
Oh.
Took 10 hours and a half, more or less.
That's not long.
And says, a GTA clone that copies the bad stuff.
GTA clone that copies the bad stuff. Okay, so we're looking for a GTA clone. So I'm thinking Saints Row is the first one, but that's a dumb comment because Saints Row is better, if anything. Open world. So it's an open worldy GTA type game, but it's a GTA clone.
It's kind of interesting because the rating that this person gave to the game is lower than the overall rating the game got.
Right.
So the game got like an 8.2.
Oh,
so
okay.
it may be just this person calling it like a bad GTA clone.
Yeah. But obviously it's got enough in common with GTA that they call it a GTA clone.
Yeah.
It's not like APB.
No.
I don't know if that's on my completion list, actually. No, that would have been a retired. Yeah, that was like someone tried to make an MMO that was GTA, but it didn't ever really succeed, and it was a bit janky and shit. But GTA clones, my goodness. And PlayStation 3. That should tell you something. Tell me something. Why can't I think of any GTA clones? Yeah. It's not like... I mean, I don't think it would be... It's not like Wet?
No.
Okay, that was much more linear. That was a cool game, but janky enough to not be good. But very good still. I don't know. Whatever. I remember playing it on PS3.
Seeing some of the completion notes on the song are just so dumb. I feel like there are like references to something in the game, but they're stupid and I love them.
I mean, I don't think it would be something like Infamous, but maybe?
No.
Well, that's an open world game, but I don't think it's very close to GTA. Good lord. GTA. It's not like a driver game, like Driver San Francisco or something.
No.
I think San Francisco is the only driver game I've finished. But it's not really a GTA clone either, so whatever. I'm trying to think of something where you probably like steal cars and do missions and it's kind of modern day. and you probably run around shooting people as well. You know, the key things that are in GTA. Oh my God. I'm sure there are people listening right now who are like, it's this, you dumb fuck. But seriously, when you actually have to sit down and think about it, my mind just kind of empties and I have no idea what the hell's going on.
Like the one bracelet that was working is now at a lunch break or something like that.
Checked out. Oh man. I know I'm gonna kick myself when I know what this is. But I'm gonna have to ask for another clue because I've been going on for too long.
Yeah, I just found a comment on Spanish, but I don't know like the terminology in the game to translate that one. But it looks useful. I'm between two of them.
Yeah.
Okay. It says, and this one is a main plus, I think. Yeah, it is a main plus site.
Okay.
This one, for main plus sites, it seems that the average is 22 hours and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But this person somehow took 13 hours and 19 minutes.
Cool.
And says, completed the main story and 2 of the police cases. Some people call the police cases as cop cases. As long with a couple of favors, enough to get to phase level 5.
Phase level 5, did you say?
Phase level 5. I'm gonna...
Face level or phase level?
Phase level.
Yeah, like your face. Yeah, okay. Man, now I think I really should know, but Jesus Christ. I mean, okay, let's go through. It's not Cyberpunk, because we've already done that.
It is not.
It's not GTA. Police cases. Oh, is it? Although face level, it's not like LA Noire.
No.
No. Okay, that knocks that one out. Face level. That's really thrown me. I thought I was onto something with like police cases and favors, but then face level.
Someone said something about jade statues.
Jade statues. Oh, sleeping dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, why didn't I think of that before? Someone had to have picked that a long time ago because, yeah, I should have thought of that so much earlier. My goodness. Great game. Fantastic game, actually. Yeah, another easy recommend if you're into the kind of open world GTA type thing. Interesting that dude said the GTA, it copies GTA, but the bad parts. Because, like, Sleeping Dogs does a lot of stuff that GTA doesn't do, but better. Like, it's got like proper martial arts combat and stuff. Yeah.
That's why I told you that guy gave it a 7. Well,
yeah.
Everyone gave it like an 8 or 9.
Yeah, and it's, well, Sleeping Dogs to me is kind of like, it's not as alienating as something like Yakuza, like the Yakuza series, where that's very, very Japanese, so it can be a bit hard to get into if you're not ready for that kind of thing. But it's also way more detailed and there's way more to do than, say, GTA, which doesn't let you do as much as it thinks it does. And I think Sleeping Dogs is kind of like a happy medium between the two. Even though I do like the Yakuza games, so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. But same with GTA, I like them as well. But yeah. Oh man. Why did I not think of Sleeping Dogs? I'm really kicking myself now. I so should have thought of that. What?
Also, where are the green missions or green something?
I'm guessing they're like, because the whole, minor spoilers, but the whole thing about Sleeping Dogs is you're playing this undercover agent who's like goes into the crime world of, I think, Hong Kong, perhaps. I could be wrong, but it could be Japanese or Chinese. I can't remember. I'm sorry for getting the two mixed up. I know that's really bad of me, but I do it all the time. So basically, yeah, there are different, like the cop missions are different to the criminal missions and all that kind of stuff. And that's like your face level is kind of like how your kind of reputation level, because like culturally, like you're saving face or you're not kind of thing. And so I think, if I remember correctly, like green missions are kind of like on the map. There's a whole different types of missions. Like there's police missions and favors and all this other stuff. But green missions, I think, are like the main bread and butter kind of thing, like to get through the story.
Okay.
But you can do other kind of stuff a lot. So yeah. Anyway, I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I played it, and it's such a good game. Actually, I'd probably replay it one day, just because. But anyway. Oh man, I am really kicking myself for that. So I am sorry for anyone who's been yelling along and saying that sleeping dogs was the answer, because my goodness, I should have known. But anyway, that brings me up to 13 against Paula's 16, and I believe that's where we can end it. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Always appreciate it. I will say again, just because we've talked about something that perhaps may be a little bit confronting, talking about disabilities and mental health issues and all that kind of thing, please take care of yourself, look after yourself. If anything does bring up any kind of bad vibes or anything like that, you don't have to listen to us talk crap. So please just go look after yourself instead. And yeah, talk to people and that kind of thing if you need to.
Yeah, and as always, if any of these like it hit a little bit close to home, or maybe you're going through something along those lines, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and remember you're a very valuable part of the world.
Yeah. And hey,
So yeah,
we'll see you on the next one.
see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If I found out tomorrow that actually now they've done something and they've patched my DNA